The Dawn of Choice Chapter 1, A New Beginning. The twin suns of Terra Nova cast long shadows across the sprawling capital city, their golden light illuminating a world caught between triumph and uncertainty. From her office in the Grand Assembly Tower, Commander Sarah Chen watched the morning bustle below, a symphony of reconstruction that had been playing for 3 years since the Dominion's fall. The city stretched to the horizon, a patchwork of gleaming new structures rising alongside the skeletal remains of Dominion architecture. Construction mechs worked tirelessly to clear the last of the alien fortifications, their massive arms delicately extracting twisted metal that had once served as instruments of oppression. In the distance, the orbital shipyards hummed with activity, transforming captured Dominion vessels into ships of exploration and aid rather than conquest. But beneath the veneer of progress, Sarah could sense the tension that gripped not just Terra Nova, but the entire galaxy. The question that haunted humanity's leaders wasn't whether they had won the war. It was what they would do with their victory, ma'am. Lieutenant Evelyn Shaw's voice drew Sarah from her contemplation. The young officer had grown into her role as Sarah's chief advisor, her once bright optimism tempered by the harsh realities of governing a galactic empire. The council is assembling. Representatives from 47 worlds have confirmed attendance. Sarah nodded, her reflection in the window showing a woman aged beyond her years by the weight of leadership. The scar along her left temple, a souvenir from the Battle of Kepler Station, had healed, but the deeper scars of command remained fresh. The Xantari delegation, Sarah asked. Ambassador Thymal arrived this morning. She's cautious. They've seen too many empires rise and fall to trust easily. Shaw paused, consulting her datapad. The Jiril are sending their youngest council member, apparently a diplomatic insult, but they're still attending, and the Keth'var. Shaw's expression darkened. War Chief Keth'var is coming personally. That could mean they're taking this seriously, or that they're planning something. Intelligence can't determine which. Sarah turned from the window, her military uniform bearing the simple insignia of the human coalition, a deliberate choice to emphasize cooperation over domination. What's the mood in the streets? Mixed, Shaw replied honestly. The inner colonies are proud. They see this as humanity's rightful place as galactic leaders. The outer territories are nervous. They remember what it was like to be governed by a distant power. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. In fighting the Dominion, humanity had inadvertently created the very thing they had once opposed: a galactic superpower capable of imposing its will on others. The question now was whether they would choose to wield that power with wisdom or succumb to the same corruption that had destroyed their enemies and our own people. Sarah asked, "How are they responding to today's agenda?" Shaw hesitated. General Holt's faction is confident. They believe the galaxy needs strong leadership, and humanity has proven we can provide it. The civilian administrators are split. Some agree with Holt. Others are pushing for a more collaborative approach. The resistance leaders, they're unified in opposition to any form of centralized galactic government. Captain Torres has been particularly vocal. He's calling today's session the first step toward becoming what we fought against. Sarah felt the familiar knot of tension in her stomach. The same divisions that had nearly torn humanity apart during the reconstruction were now threatening to fracture them again, just as they faced their greatest test not of military might, but of moral character. The Grand Assembly Hall had been expanded since the early days of Terra Nova's liberation. What had once been a modest chamber designed for colonial governance now rivaled the great halls of ancient Earth. Its soaring architecture, a testament to humanity's newfound confidence. But today, as delegates filed in from across the galaxy, the vast space felt oppressive rather than inspiring. Sarah took her place at the central podium, looking out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike. In the front rows sat humanity's leadership, General Alexander Holt, his bearing as rigid as ever despite the years of peace. Dr. Alina Buscus, her scientific mind always calculating probabilities and outcomes. Admiral James Reeves, weathered by decades of warfare but still sharp as plasma steel. Behind them, the alien delegates sat in carefully arranged clusters. The Xantari, their crystalline forms refracting the chamber's light into prismatic rainbows, observed with the patience of a species that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The Jiril delegation, their metallic exoskeletons gleaming with technological sophistication, watched with barely concealed skepticism, and in the back the Keth'var warriors sat like coiled springs, their predatory grace a reminder that not all of humanity's former enemies had been completely pacified. Representatives of the galaxy, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in a shared future. 3 years ago, the Dominion fell, ending 1,000 years of oppression. Today, we must decide what will rise in its place. She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. Humanity stands at a crossroads. We have the power to impose our will on the galaxy, to rule as the Dominion once ruled, or we can choose a different path, one of cooperation, of shared governance, of mutual prosperity. General Holt rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the chamber with military precision. Commander Chen speaks of choice, but let's be honest about our situation. The galaxy is in chaos. Former Dominion territories are descending into civil war. Piracy is rampant. Trade routes are disrupted. The only force capable of restoring order is humanity. He gestured toward the alien delegates. We've proven our strength. We've demonstrated our commitment to justice. The galaxy needs leadership, and we have the responsibility to provide it. A murmur ran through the assembly, some approving, others concerned. Ambassador Thymal of the Zantari rose, her crystalline voice resonating with harmonic overtones. The young species speaks of responsibility, but we have heard such words before. The Dominion too claimed to bring order to chaos. How do we know humanity will not follow the same path? War Chief Keth'var of the Keth'var stood, his predatory frame towering over the other delegates. The Thymal speaks wisdom. We have fought against humanity. We know their strength and their ruthlessness. Warriors who can defeat the Dominion can just as easily become the Dominion. The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Human delegates argued passionately about their species' commitment to freedom and justice, while alien representatives countered with examples of humanity's wartime brutality. Sarah watched the chaos unfold, seeing in it a microcosm of the galaxy's uncertainty. Order, she called out, her command voice cutting through the noise. Order, we are here to discuss the future, not relitigate the past. Captain Torres, representing the outer colonies, stood up. The past is what brought us here, Commander. We can't ignore it. Some of us remember what it was like to be governed by a distant power that claimed to know what was best for us. And some of us, Governor Walsh of the inner colonies interjected, remember what it was like when that distant power was actively trying to exterminate us. There's a difference between governance and genocide. Dr. Vasquez rose, her scientific demeanor providing a moment of calm rationality. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Instead of debating whether humanity should lead, maybe we should be discussing what form that leadership should take. Lieutenant Shaw activated the chamber's holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors: blue for human-controlled territories, red for areas still in chaos, yellow for neutral systems, and green for the handful of stable alien governments that had survived the Dominion's fall. Data is clear, Shaw reported. 70% of the galaxy lacks stable governance. Trade has collapsed in most sectors. We're seeing the emergence of warlords, pirate fleets, and slave markets. Without intervention, we're looking at decades of Dark Age. Intervention by whom? Asked Representative Zeth of the Jiril, his mechanical voice devoid of emotion. Your species assumes that order must come from above, imposed by the strong upon the weak. But true stability comes from within, from species governing themselves according to their own nature. Tell that to the refugees flooding our aid stations, Admiral Reeves replied grimly. Tell that to the mining colonies being raided by pirate fleets. Sometimes order must be imposed because the alternative is chaos. Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Every word spoken in this chamber would echo across the galaxy, shaping the lives of trillions of beings for generations to come. The choice they made today would define not just humanity's future, but the very nature of galactic civilization. The question before us, she said, her voice cutting through the debate, is not whether the galaxy needs leadership. The question is what kind of leadership we will provide. She moved to the holographic display, her figure silhouetted against the swirling lights of countless star systems. We can choose the path of the old empire: rule through fear, govern through force, impose unity through submission. Or we can choose something new: leadership through example, governance through consent, unity through cooperation. The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air like the moment before a thunderstorm. Chapter 2. The Council of Leaders. The debate stretched on for hours, the chamber's climate control systems working overtime to manage the heat generated by passionate discourse and alien physio. Sarah had called for a brief recess, but she could see that the fundamental divisions remained as stark as ever. In a private conference room adjacent to the main chamber, humanity's core leadership gathered around a smaller holographic display. The informal setting didn't diminish the tension. If anything, it made the personal stakes more apparent. "We're losing them," General Holt said bluntly, his scarred hands clasped behind his back as he paced the length of the room. "The longer we debate, the more uncertain we appear. The galaxy doesn't need another talking shop, it needs decisive leadership." "Decisive isn't the same as dictatorial," Lieutenant Shaw replied, her voice carrying an edge of frustration. "If we steamroll over every other voice in the galaxy, how are we different from the Dominion?" "Because we're trying to help, not exploit," Admiral Reeves interjected. "The Dominion enslaved species to feed their war machine. We're talking about bringing stability and prosperity." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her datapad, where she had been analyzing real-time feeds from across the galaxy. "The situation is deteriorating faster than our models predicted. The Vega sector has seen 3 different warlords rise and fall in the past month. The Centauri trade routes are completely disrupted. If we don't act soon, we'll be facing a galaxy-wide collapse." Sarah studied the faces around her people she had fought beside, bled beside, trusted with her life and the lives of billions. They were all dedicated to humanity's welfare, but their visions of how to achieve that welfare were increasingly divergent. "What are you suggesting, Marcus?" she asked General Holt directly. "A benevolent protectorate," Holt replied without hesitation. "We establish human authority over key systems, trade hubs, strategic resources, population centers. We maintain local autonomy where possible, but ultimate authority rests with us. It's not conquest, it's stewardship. Stewardship without consent is still occupation," Shaw countered. "The outer colonies learned that lesson the hard way under Dominion rule. And the alternative is what?" Holt's voice rose slightly. "We sit back and watch the galaxy tear itself apart. We let warlords and pirates fill the power vacuum. Sometimes leadership means making unpopular decisions." Captain Torres, who had been listening silently in the corner, finally spoke up. "General, with all due respect, you sound exactly like every conqueror in history. They all claimed they were bringing civilization to the barbarians, because sometimes they were," Holt shot back. "Not every empire is built on exploitation, Torres. Some are built on necessity." "The Dominion probably told themselves the same thing," Torres replied. 1,000 years ago, when they were first expanding, they probably had leaders just like you, convinced they were saving the galaxy from chaos." The room fell silent, the weight of the comparison hanging heavy in the air. Sarah could see the hurt in Holt's eyes, the recognition that his former comrade was questioning not just his judgment but his fundamental character. "That's not fair, Captain," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "General Holt has never advocated for exploitation or oppression. His proposal is about stability, not conquest." "The road to tyranny is paved with good intentions," Torres replied. "How many species will we protect before we decide they can't be trusted to govern themselves? How many worlds will we stabilize before we forget they were ever independent?" Sarah moved to the window, looking out at the city below. Construction crews were working on a new cultural center joint project between human architects and Xantari crystal singers that would serve as a symbol of interspecies cooperation, but even that hopeful sight was shadowed by the security checkpoints and patrol craft that had become necessary to maintain order. "There's another option," she said without turning around. "We could step back, withdraw to human space, secure our own borders, and let the rest of the galaxy sort itself out." "Isolationism," Admiral Reeves said dismissively. "That's not abdication. We have the power to help, and that gives us the responsibility to act." "Does it?" Shaw asked. "Or does having power just make us think we have the right to impose our solutions on everyone else?" Sarah turned back to face the group. "What do the alien delegates actually want from us?" Shaw consulted her notes. "It varies. The Xantari want guarantees that we won't follow the Dominion's path. They're willing to accept human leadership if it comes with strong safeguards against abuse. The Giaril want technological and economic cooperation but oppose any form of political authority. The Keth'var," she paused. "The Keth'var are harder to read. War Chief Keth'var speaks of strength and respect, but it's unclear whether he sees us as potential allies or future enemies." "And the neutral systems?" Sarah asked. Terrified, Dr. Vasquez replied bluntly, "They remember being caught between the Dominion and the Resistance. They don't want to choose sides in another galactic conflict." Sarah nodded slowly. The complexity of the situation was staggering. Dozens of species with different cultures, different needs, different fears. The simple clarity of the war years when humanity's choice was between freedom and extinction, had given way to a maze of competing interests and conflicting ideologies. "We need to go back out there," she said finally. "But first, I want everyone to remember something. 3 years ago, we were fighting for the right to choose our own destiny. Today we're deciding whether to extend that right to the rest of the galaxy." As they filed back into the main chamber, Sarah could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The decisions made in the next few hours would echo through the centuries, determining whether humanity would be remembered as liberators or conquerors, as builders or destroyers. The afternoon session began with presentations from the alien delegates, each offering their perspective on humanity's role in the post-Dominion galaxy. Ambassador Thymal of the Zantari spoke with the patient wisdom of a species that had observed the rise and fall of empires for millennia. "We do not fear human strength," she said, her crystalline voice creating harmonic resonances throughout the chamber. "We fear human certainty." The Dominion believed absolutely in their right to rule, in their destiny to bring order to the galaxy. Such certainty breeds blindness to consequences. She gestured toward the holographic display, where images of devastated worlds flickered in the light. "These are the fruits of absolute certainty. We ask not that humanity abandon leadership, but that they embrace doubt, the doubt that prevents good intentions from becoming tyrannical actions." Representative Zeth of the Georeal stepped forward, his mechanical form moving with precise, calculated movements. "The Zantari speak of wisdom, but wisdom without power is merely philosophy. Humanity has proven their capability. They defeated the Dominion when others could not, but capability and authority are different things." His optical sensors focused on Sarah with uncomfortable intensity. "We propose a confederation, voluntary cooperation between equals rather than submission to a central authority. Let each species contribute what they can, receive what they need, but govern themselves according to their own nature." War Chief Keth'var of the Kozar rose last, his predatory frame commanding attention through sheer physical presence. "The metal speakers and crystal singers offer words," he said, his voice carrying the growl of a natural predator. "But words are wind. The galaxy recognizes only strength." He moved toward the center of the chamber, his movements fluid and dangerous. "Humanity has proven their strength in battle. Now they must prove their strength in peace. The Kozar will follow strength, but we will not bow to weakness disguised as virtue." His gaze locked with Sarah's. "Show us what you truly are, human leader, conqueror or ally, hunter or prey. The galaxy will know the difference." The tension in the chamber was palpable. Sarah could see the human delegates bristling at Keth'var's provocative words, while the alien representatives watched carefully to see how humanity would respond to the challenge. War Chief Keth'var speaks of strength, Sarah said, rising from her seat. "But there are different kinds of strength, the strength to conquer, and the strength to restrain, the strength to dominate, and the strength to serve." She moved to the holographic display, her figure again silhouetted against the lights of countless worlds. 3 years ago, humanity faced extinction. We could have accepted defeat, could have bowed to the Dominion and lived as slaves. Instead, we chose to fight not because we were certain of victory, but because we believed freedom was worth the risk of death. The chamber was completely silent now, every delegate hanging on her words. "Today we face a different kind of extinction, the death of our principles. We could choose the easy path, could impose our will through superior force. We could become the next Dominion, ruling through fear and calling it peace." She turned to face the assembly, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "But that would not be strength, it would be cowardice. True strength is choosing the harder path, the uncertain path, the path that requires us to trust in others rather than simply dominating them." Chapter 3: The Voices of the Galaxies. The day wore on. The chamber filled with the voices of smaller delegations, species and systems that had remained silent during the formal presentations, but whose perspectives would prove crucial to any lasting solution. The diversity of opinions was staggering, reflecting the complex tapestry of galactic civilization that the Dominion had tried to homogenize through force. The delegation from the Sirius Collective, a group of mining worlds that had suffered terribly under Dominion exploitation, presented a desperate plea for protection. Their representative, a weathered human named Marcus Webb, who bore the scars of years in the extraction pits, spoke with the raw honesty of someone who had lived through the worst of alien occupation. "We don't care about political theory," Webb said bluntly. "We care about survival. The Dominion worked our people to death for their precious metals. Now they're gone, but the pirates and warlords are moving in. We need protection. and humanity is the only force strong enough to provide it. His words were echoed by similar delegations from across the galaxy: agricultural worlds whose food production had been disrupted, industrial centers whose infrastructure lay in ruins, refugee populations who had nowhere else to turn. To them, the philosophical debates about governance and autonomy were luxuries they couldn't afford, but other voices offered different perspectives. The delegation from the Tau Ceti Research Consortium, led by Dr. Alara Kessler, presented a vision of voluntary cooperation based on shared knowledge and mutual benefit. The galaxy doesn't need another empire, Dr. Kessler argued. It needs a network, a web of connections that allows each system to contribute its strengths while maintaining its independence. Humanity's greatest gift isn't military might, adaptability, creativity, the ability to find solutions others miss. The consortium had already begun implementing their vision, establishing research partnerships between human and alien scientists, sharing technology and knowledge freely rather than hoarding it for strategic advantage. Their early results were promising: breakthrough developments in medical technology, environmental restoration, and energy production that benefited all participants. But even their optimistic vision was challenged by harsh realities. Representative Sarah Kim from the Border Worlds Federation spoke with the bitter experience of systems caught between competing powers. Dr. Kessler's network sounds wonderful in theory, Kim said. But networks require trust, and trust requires time to build. Right now, we're under attack from 3 different pirate fleets. We need protection today, not promises of future cooperation. The debate began to fracture along practical lines. The developed worlds, with their stable infrastructure and established institutions, favored gradual cooperation and voluntary association. The frontier worlds, still struggling with basic security and survival, demanded immediate intervention and protection. The alien species were split between those who sought opportunity and human leadership and those who feared a repetition of dominion. Oppression. Ambassador Thymal of the Zantari requested permission to address the practical concerns directly. Perhaps we are asking the wrong question, she said, her crystalline voice cutting through the heated debate. Instead of whether humanity should lead, perhaps we should ask how leadership should be structured to serve all voices. She activated a personal holographic projector, displaying a complex geometric pattern that shifted and evolved as she spoke. The Zantari have observed many forms of governance across the centuries. Empires that ruled through fear, federations that collapsed through indecision, confederations that fractured through competing interests. But there is another model, one that has rarely been attempted on a galactic scale. The pattern in the hologram resolved into an intricate lattice, with nodes of different sizes connected by flowing streams of light. A symbiotic network, not centralized authority, but distributed responsibility. Not one species ruling others, but all species contributing to the stability of the whole. Representative Zeth of the Jiril studied the pattern with obvious interest, explained the mechanisms. How would decisions be made? How would conflicts be resolved? How would resources be allocated? Each system maintains autonomy over internal affairs, Thymal explained. But all systems contribute to shared resources: defense, trade, scientific research, disaster relief. Decisions affecting multiple systems are made through consensus, with humanity serving as coordinators rather than rulers. War Chief Keth'var snorted dismissively. Coordination without authority is chaos. In battle, soldiers do not vote on strategy, follow the strongest leader. But this is not battle, Dr. Vasquez interjected. This is governance, and governance through consent has proven more stable than governance through force. Has it? Keth'var challenged. Your own species spent centuries in endless warfare before the Dominion unified them through conquest. Sometimes force is the only language the weak understand. The chamber erupted again, but this time the argument was different. Instead of abstract debates about political philosophy, the delegates were grappling with concrete questions of implementation. How would a symbiotic network handle systems that refuse to participate? How would it deal with external threats? How would it balance the needs of powerful systems against those of weaker ones? Sarah watched the discussion evolve, seeing in it both hope and frustration. The delegates were finally moving beyond their initial positions, beginning to imagine new possibilities. But they were also discovering how difficult it would be to translate idealistic visions into practical reality. Lieutenant Shaw approached with an urgent message. Ma'am, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. A Dominion remnant fleet has been detected moving toward the Vega sector. 3 systems are requesting immediate military assistance. The timing couldn't have been worse or more revealing. As the delegates debated the future of galactic governance, the past was reasserting itself with lethal force. Sarah felt that familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders as she faced the same impossible choice that had defined her career. Act decisively or watch innocent people suffer. How large is the fleet? She asked quietly. 12 capital ships, maybe 40 escorts, Shaw replied. Enough to devastate any undefended system, but not enough to threaten our main forces. Sarah nodded, her mind already calculating response times and tactical options, but she also recognized the broader implications of the crisis. How she responded to this threat would send a message to every delegate in the chamber about humanity's true intentions. General Holt, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber and cutting through the ongoing debate. Prepare a response. Fleet, minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat, maximum effort to minimize civilian casualties. Holt nodded grimly. Rules of engagement. Offer surrender first, but don't hesitate to engage if they refuse. And Marcus, she paused, making sure her words would be heard by every delegate in the chamber. I want alien observers on every ship. Let them see exactly how humanity fights when we're trying to protect rather than conquer. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This would be the first major military action since the formation of the new government. The first test of humanity's stated commitment to protection rather than domination. War Chief Keth'var stepped forward. The Keth'var volunteer ships for this mission. Let us fight beside you and judge your worthiness as allies. Ambassador Thymal's crystalline form shimmered with apparent approval. The Xantari will provide medical and rescue ships. Let healing follow in the wake of necessary violence. Even Representative Zeth, despite his mechanical reserve, offered Gioril technical support. Our sensor networks will provide early warning of future threats. Prevention is preferable to reaction. Sarah felt a surge of hope as she watched former enemies volunteer to stand beside humanity in defense of innocent lives. This was what she had envisioned, not human dominance, but cooperative strength in service of shared values. But she also knew that the real test was just beginning. It was one thing to make noble speeches in a comfortable chamber. It was another to maintain those principles when lives hung in the balance, and split-second decisions could mean the difference between salvation and catastrophe. The fleet launches in 6 hours, she announced. When they return, we'll know whether our words today were promises or just wishful thinking. Chapter 4. The Tipping Point, the Strategic Operations Center beneath the Grand Assembly. Tower hummed with controlled urgency as humanity's most advanced fleet prepared for its first post-war engagement. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation in real time. 12 Dominion remnant ships approaching the defenseless mining colonies of the Vega sector, while a hastily assembled coalition fleet raced to intercept them. Sarah stood at the central command station, watching the deadly dance of interstellar warfare unfold across light years of space. But this engagement was different from every battle she had fought before. The stakes weren't just military, they were moral. Every tactical decision would be scrutinized by alien observers. Every casualty would be weighed against humanity's claims of benevolent leadership. Coalition fleet is 30 minutes from engagement range, Admiral Reeves reported. The Dominion remnants are holding course for the primary mining station. They're not even trying to avoid contact. General Holt studied the tactical display. With the eye of a veteran strategist, they're testing us. They want to see how we respond to provocation, whether we're as committed to our principles under fire as we are in debate. Incoming transmission from Admiral Petrov aboard the flagship, Shaw announced. He's requesting final engagement authorization. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. 3 years ago, she would have given that authorization without hesitation. Enemy was clearly hostile, the threat to civilians was real, and humanity's military superiority was overwhelming. But now, with alien observers watching from every ship in the fleet, every decision carried implications far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Open a channel to the Dominion fleet first, she ordered. Offer them the chance to surrender. Sarah Holt said quietly, they're Dominion remnants. They've never surrendered to anyone. All we're doing is giving them time to prepare for battle. Maybe, Sarah replied. But if we're going to be the galaxy's protectors, we have to show that we try diplomacy before we resort to force. The communication channel crackled to life, and the alien features of a Dominion commander appeared on the main screen. His reptilian face bore the ceremonial scars of a high-ranking warrior, and his eyes burned with the fanatic devotion that had made the Dominion such a formidable enemy. Human commander, the alien said, his voice dripping with contempt. "I am War Leader Kreshtak of the Eternal Dominion. These systems belong to us by right of conquest. Withdraw, or be destroyed." Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "War Leader Kreshtak, the Dominion is defeated. Your empire is gone, but you and your people don't have to die with it. Surrender now, and you'll be treated according to the Galactic conventions of war." Krestak's laugh was like the sound of tearing metal. "Surrender to the very slaves who destroyed our empire. Death is preferable to such dishonor." The screen went black. Sarah felt a familiar coldness settle in her stomach, the recognition that peaceful resolution was no longer possible. "All ships, weapons free," she ordered. "Engage at will, but minimize civilian casualties. Offer quarter to any ship that strikes their colors." The battle that followed was both magnificent and terrible. Humanity's ships moved with the precision of master craftsmen, their weapons targeting enemy vessels with surgical accuracy while carefully avoiding any shots that might endanger the mining station. The alien observers watched in fascination as human crews demonstrated a level of tactical coordination that the Dominion, for all their individual prowess, had never achieved. But the Dominion remnants fought with the desperate fury of fanatics. Their ships were older, their crews smaller, their technology inferior, but they fought as if their very souls depended on victory. They crashed their damaged vessels into human ships, self-destructed to avoid capture, and targeted civilian installations with their dying breaths. Dominion ship breaking toward the mining station, the tactical officer reported. "It's heavily damaged, probably on a suicide run." Sarah watched the tactical display as the crippled enemy vessel limped toward the civilian station, its weapons charging for a final, devastating attack. The nearest human ship was too far away to intercept, but Keth'var vessel Blood Oath is moving to intercept, Admiral Reeves announced. "They're putting themselves directly in the line of fire." On the display, Warchief Keth'var ship maneuvered with impossible grace, placing itself between the dying Dominion vessel and the civilian station. The alien warrior's voice crackled over the communication channel. "This is Keth'var to human. Commander Hunters, protect the weak. This is the way of strength." The explosion, when it came, lit up the tactical display like a newborn star. Both ships vanished in a burst of unleashed energy, but the civilian station remained intact. Keth'var had given his life to protect people he had never met, of a species he had once fought against. The remainder of the battle was a formality. The surviving Dominion ships, demoralized by the destruction of their leader's vessel and facing overwhelming odds, began to surrender. One by one they powered down their weapons and allowed themselves to be taken into custody. "All enemy vessels accounted for," Admiral Reeves reported. "Minimal civilian casualties. The mining station is secure." But the victory felt hollow. Sarah stared at the tactical display, where the expanding debris field marked the spot where Keth'var had made his final stand. The Kaiser warrior had understood, something that she was only beginning to grasp, that true leadership sometimes required the ultimate sacrifice. "Incoming transmission from the alien observers," Shaw announced. "They want to make their reports to the full assembly." Sarah nodded. Whatever the observers had seen during the battle would shape the galaxy's perception of humanity for generations to come. She only hoped that Keth'var's sacrifice had demonstrated the kind of leadership they aspired to provide. The return to Terra Nova felt different than any homecoming Sarah had experienced. There were no victory parades, no celebrations in the streets. Instead, there was a somber recognition that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had seen humanity at war again, but this time they had fought not for conquest, but for protection, not for glory, but for principle. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened within hours of the fleet's return. The same delegates who had debated abstract principles of governance now faced the concrete reality of those principles tested in battle. Ambassador Thymal of the Zantari spoke first, her crystalline voice carrying new harmonics of respect and sorrow. "We have witnessed both the nobility and the tragedy of leadership. Humanity fought with restraint, offered mercy to those who deserved none, and accepted sacrifice from allies who chose to stand with them." She paused, her form shimmering with what humans had learned to recognize as emotional resonance. "Warchief Keth'var of the Keth'var gave his life to protect strangers. In doing so, he showed us what true strength looks like, not the power to destroy, but the will to preserve." Representative Zeth of the Jiril, his mechanical form unchanged, but his voice carrying new undertones, added his analysis. "Tactical efficiency 94%, civilian casualties minimal, rules of engagement consistently observed, despite provocation. Conclusion: humanity demonstrates capability for restrained application of force, but it was the testimony of the human survivors from the mining station that proved most powerful. Marcus Webb, the same representative who had earlier pleaded for protection, stood before the assembly with tears in his eyes. "They came to kill us," he said simply. "The Dominion remnants wanted to slaughter every man, woman, and child on that station just to prove they could still hurt humanity. But humans died to protect us. Aliens died to protect us. That's not conquest, that's salvation." The chamber was completely silent as Webb continued. "I don't care what you call it, empire, federation, network, alliance. I only care that when we needed help, it came. When we faced death, someone stood between us and the darkness." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settling around her like a mantle. The abstract debates about governance had given way to something much more fundamental, a recognition that in a dangerous galaxy, someone had to be willing to stand guard, to sacrifice, to lead not from privilege but from responsibility. "The question before us," she said, rising to address the assembly, "is no longer whether humanity should lead. The question is whether we are worthy of the trust that War Chief Keth'var placed in us when he gave his life for people he had never met." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of humans and aliens alike. "We cannot promise perfection. We cannot guarantee that we will never make mistakes, never let power corrupt us, never